recommendation. Since the application's online, the letters, are they going to be sent to you, or is it going to be scanned and done online?
Okay, the questions about letters of recommendation, they will be sent to PharmCast. There are directions on the PharmCast page. There's a form that your recommenders have to fill out, and they will be submitted to us. We ask that you have a minimum of 2 letters of recommendation, and you may submit up to 3. While we're talking about letters of recommendation, I will say a lot of times we get the question of who are the best people to write a letter of recommendation for me. And usually a professor, a TA, someone you've worked with, you know, it could be someone you've volunteered with, someone that can speak to your ability. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone from pharmacy, but someone who knows you well and can speak to your interest in pharmacy, your work performance, your academic performance, someone that knows you well, no family members or friends or someone that can't speak to those attributes. And a lot of times we'll see letters of recommendation from professors or, I guess, former employers that really didn't know the applicant that well, and I think applicants think, well, if I get this person that maybe has a important title, that would look favorably, but really it's not, because we want to make sure that they can speak to your ability and that they know you well and can really speak highly about your performance. So make sure you strongly consider who you're going to ask to write those letters of recommendation. Okay? All right. So that's going to be phase 1 of the application, PharmCast. Phase 2 of the application is our supplemental application, and it will be available on our website Monday, which is August 17th. It's a very short application, shouldn't take you too long to complete it, maybe 30 minutes at the most, but you do need to read it very carefully. It will cover some policies that we have at the school. You'll be asked to read those policies. You'll also be asked to fill out some basic demographic information and also which campus you prefer to attend, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then you'll have to print off a signature sheet and sign it stating that you've read these policies and are aware of it, and send in your supplemental application fee. And that fee comes to us at UNC, and it's $77. Okay? And you will need to print off, after you submit it online, print off that signature page. Well, actually, you print it off first, then you submit it online and send in the signature page with your check to us in the Office of Student Services. Okay? And that deadline is November 2nd as well. And it needs to be postmarked by November 2nd. It doesn't have to be in our office, but postmarked by November 2nd. Okay? One thing the applicants want to know is, did you get my application? You know, I sent it in, have you received it? Especially right before the deadline, and I would want to know that too. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of those questions in phone calls with our staff and the number of applications we receive, but we would like for you to know that information. So there are 2 ways you can figure that out. One is on PharmCast. There is an option where you can check to see if the application has been submitted, and that will tell you if it's been submitted by the deadline sent to us. And for the supplemental portion where you have to print off the signature sheet and mail in your supplemental application fee, we ask that you send that certified mail. So if someone has to sign for it and you know that it was received in our office. Okay? After a couple of weeks, I say a couple loosely, 2 to 4 weeks, once we process your application, we receive it, you will receive an email from our office stating that we've received your application and are processing it. So it's not immediate, there's a lag time of a few weeks, but you will receive confirmation of that. And so that reminds me to say, please check your email. We've had some cases where applicants submit or put an email on PharmCast and don't check it, or the emails that we sent are automatically directed to a spam folder, and that's how we invite people to come in for interviews. That's how we ask you if we're missing some information or some documentation. We request it that way. We communicate primarily via email. So please make sure you check your email regularly and your spam box to make sure that none of it was misdirected there. Okay. So please note, the important take-home point here is November 2nd is our deadline. We're very strict about that to make sure. We've had people that have had computer problems that waited and were completing that PharmCast application the night before or the day of at 11 p.m. and missed the deadline of 11:59 p.m., I guess. And people who didn't get that supplemental in on time, and that, unfortunately, we cannot accept applications that are late, just to be fair to all applicants. All right. I'm going to stop there and see if I have any questions. And for those of you that came in a little late, we are streaming this live to the web, so I'll ask that you use the microphone in front of you and push the button that says push to ask a question, just so we can hear you. Any questions about phase 1 or phase 2? Yeah.
Wanted to know if admissions is rolling to any extent.
Okay, the question is about rolling admissions. It's somewhat rolling. I'm not sure of what the official answer would be, but we do start interviewing applicants somewhere in November or December, and we interview through February, and we start informing applicants of their admission decision, sometimes late December, but usually it's January through early March. So there is a 3 to 4 month period where we're sending out admission decisions. And I get this question a lot, does it matter if I send my application in earlier, would that improve my chances? No, it doesn't necessarily improve your chances of being admitted, but it does help us, and in turn help you, to come in earlier, hopefully, for an interview, and for us to be able to look over your application and review it earlier in the cycle, so maybe you would know a decision earlier. It's not guaranteed, but if we can receive that application earlier, hopefully we can invite you in for an interview earlier and you could get a decision. If you have friends that are applying and you're applying, please be careful and don't compare yourself to others or correspondence that they're getting, because that can cause some undue stress. A lot of people, their friend will hear something and they will not have heard anything, or vice versa, and people worry about that. And honestly, we will process applications in batches, and it just depends on when we receive them in our office, how many interview sessions we have open. It can depend on a lot of things. So if you don't receive correspondence about an admission decision at the time another person does, it doesn't mean that person was a stronger applicant necessarily than you. It could just mean we got the application in sooner and was able to process it a little bit quicker. So I don't want people to worry about that. That causes a lot of stress. Okay.
I have a question. What bachelor's degree is held by the majority of accepted students?
Okay. Well, we have 65% of our students, and you'll see in your packet quick facts, and it lists our admitted applicants that we admitted. 65% have a previous bachelor's degree. And of those bachelor's degree, I'd probably have to guess, I would say the majority of the bachelor's degree are in biochemistry, some type of chemistry or biology. Would you agree, Ms. Goldston? Okay. So we don't know exactly, I don't have that data with me now, but the majority are in a science field. Now that doesn't mean that if you're an art major or an education major, not to apply. We love diversity in our program, diversity of backgrounds, and different people bring different strengths to our program. So we do have students that have very different undergraduate experiences, and that's fine as long as you complete those prerequisites that are required. Another question I get a lot is, does having a previous bachelor's degree improve your chances of admission? And we do not give any extra points or any preference to students that have a 4-year degree. However, we do have more applicants apply that have a 4-year degree, therefore a larger percentage are admitted out of that pool. And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes applicants that have previous degrees, previous work experience are able to perform a little bit better on the application process. They have more years to average out if they had a bad grade. They have more life experiences, so when it comes time for the interview, they can really talk about these life experiences. So applicants may tend to do a little better, but we don't give preferential treatment to applicants with a prior BS degree. Yes, sir.
Do you, for the prerequisites, do you count life experience in exchange for some of the prerequisites?
Okay, the question is, do we count life experiences in exchange for the prerequisites? And no, we don't. I think the only one maybe is a foreign language that we have, is that correct? A foreign language. But other than that, we do not count life experiences. And we're going to talk about prerequisites next. Okay, so Andrew is going to bring up our prerequisite page, and you can see there are different items that you can click. How many people have or will have a 4-year degree by spring semester of 2010? Okay, you only need to complete the math and science prerequisite courses, only math and science, if you have a 4-year degree or will have by the time you would enter pharmacy school. And Andrew's pulled up these courses, and you can see on the web they're listed all of the course numbers. If you have not completed a BS degree, your undergrad student, either here at UNC or at another institution, you will, in addition, have to complete the general education requirements that are listed there, and that's in order to graduate from UNC. And Ms. Goldson's going to come up and talk a little bit about that. She's the expert on the prerequisites and how to look at transfer equivalencies from another university. But all of the math and science prerequisites need to be completed by the spring of 2010 for entry into our program fall of 2010. So by this spring, you need to have all of your math and science prerequisites completed. Occasionally, we will allow a student to take one science in the summer, but that's very rare. We prefer that students have all of their prereqs completed by spring, and if you have 2 or 3 or 4 prereqs in math and science to complete, you need to wait until the next year to apply. There are, for general education requirements, there are some opportunities, maybe 1 or 2 to take an elective course, but it's hard with that pharmacy schedule and completing clerkships in the summer to be able to get those prerequisites additional in once you start the program. Okay. And the last thing I'll say before we ask Ms. Goldston to come up is all prerequisite courses, we're going to talk about factors that we look at in admissions next, but all prerequisite courses you need to complete with a grade of C- or above in your math and science. So C- or above in all math and science prerequisite courses. Okay. Ms. Goldston, you want to come up?
Yes, I have 2 questions. Number 1, are Carolina students or in-state students given priority?
Okay, great question. We do adhere to the university guidelines in that we are a state-supported school, so we only accept roughly 18% of students from out of state. So that's, I guess, good news for our in-state students, but for out-of-state students, we want you to apply, and we We love to have out-of-state students, but it is a little bit more competitive, I'll be honest, if you're an out-of-state student, just because we can only accept somewhere between 18 and 20% from out-of-state. And we accept 142 on the Chapel Hill campus and up to 15 on the Elizabeth City campus.
Is there a preference to where the prerequisites should be taken?
Okay. There's no preference to where the prerequisite courses are taken. It needs to be, of course, from an accredited school in the United States to complete those prerequisites. We do like to see people taking full academic loads. One science course a semester doesn't really let us know if you can handle, you know, the rigor of 18, 19 hours once you get in pharmacy school. So we do like to see some full loads. We know that some people that are working full-time and are going back and taking courses at the community college will not take a full load, and that's okay because they're able to manage one course plus working full-time jobs. So there are different exceptions, and we look at everything, but we do want to make sure that people are able to handle the rigor of the curriculum. Mm-hmm.
I understand your school wants, the School of Pharmacy wants.
Okay, the question is, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, so I'm just going to briefly address that, and then I'm going to come back to the details, but the question is about prerequisites and PCAT. We want a good GPA and a good PCAT. And if one, I'm going to talk about the cutoffs in a minute, but if one is a little bit below where our average is, we prefer that the other would be at the average or higher to balance it out. So we look at both of them. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I have two questions.
Okay.
First one is on the prerequisites. Microbiology listed does not call for a lab, and at UNCG they have a lab to go with it. So do you take the lab?
Yes, we need to change that on the form. It's changed on the website, but microbiology lab is required. Mm-hmm.
I have one more.
Okay.
From my bachelor's, I am one of the unique backgrounds. I have a mechanical engineering degree.
Okay.
I have chemistry, but I do not have the chemistry labs because it was not required. So do I need to take the general, I'm talking about the general chemistry, because I'm taking organic now.
I think Ms. Goldston would probably be the best person to answer that. Just a moment. Okay, so the question, Ms. Goldston, is if a student has she has a mechanical engineering degree, she took the chemistries, but did not have the lab, the general chemistry. She's taken organic now, but for someone that's taken a chemistry degree without the labs, would they need to go back and take the labs, or is that an individual case that maybe she needs to talk with you after this? So that's a special case, and if you have special cases like that, I mean, we encourage you to ask questions, but if it's a special case, sometimes things are, might be better addressed one-on-one, because that's a difficult one to answer. You want to come up and do the, okay, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Goldston so she can talk about how to transfer, or how to look at transfer equivalencies.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to briefly walk you through doing transcript evaluation. Mainly, the first thing that you would need to do is you need to have a copy of your transcript from each school that you attended. From that, then you would go to our website. After you click on admissions, you would click on prerequisites. And then you would click on the course equivalency, transfer equivalency site. And here, this is where you would go and look up the individual school where you completed the courses at. And what I'm going to use today for an example is North Carolina State University. And Andrew's going to pull that information up for us. Now, if you already have a bachelor's degree, we're just looking for completion of the math and science prerequisites. Okay, and once you find your school, North Carolina State University, you want to click on that, and there you will find a list of courses, UNC Chapel Hill courses, and how your individual course from North Carolina State will transfer. Let's say you do not have a degree and you're trying to take a course to fulfill the historical analysis perspective. So let's say you completed History 151. At North Carolina State University, it would probably be like a History 201 or something in that nature. See that one listed. It should be up at the top very much. We're looking for something equivalent to History 151 at Carolina. Probably like a Western Civilization 1 or 2. Let's go with something like that. Or American history. That's it right there. And that's 205. Okay, so at State, you completed History 205, and it's going to transfer to UNC Chapel Hill as History 151. And so what you want to do is you want to note on your state transcript the equivalent UNC Chapel Hill course number. And you'd like to continue that with all of the courses that you've completed. And then once you've determined how your courses from state will transfer to UNC Chapel Hill, there's a second website that you would need to go to. And Andrew's going to pull that up. And that's also from our prerequisite screen. Okay, and once you go to this website, you want to look up History 151, which is the UNC Chapel Hill course number. And from there, it will tell you the individual general education perspective that this course would fulfill. And this would fulfill our historical analysis perspective. Okay, and the same thing would be, would apply if you completed, let's say, Chemistry 101 at State. That would transfer to UNC Chapel Hill as Chemistry 101, which is the first general chemistry prerequisite that we're looking for. It's very important to note that with our science courses, we do require lab with all of our science courses. So if your school does not offer a lab, you will have to complete that before enrolling at UNC Chapel Hill. For North Carolina schools, we do have the transfer equivalency screens out there for all of the North Carolina schools. If you completed courses at a college that's out of state, it may be listed on the website. If it's not listed there, then there's also, you can contact our Office of Undergraduate Admissions if you have specific questions concerning a course that you want to make sure will transfer to UNC Chapel Hill. And you could also email that information to us also. What you'd want to do is you want to list the title of the course, the number of credit hours, and also make sure you let us know where you completed the course. Sometimes we can just shoot you an email back with the equivalent course that it will transfer to UNC Chapel Hill as. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Will you please address AP credit and how that's evaluated?
Okay, I'm sure Andrew will pull this information up for us also, but we do accept AP credit, but we award credit the same way as the Office of Undergraduate Admissions would for a student applying to UNC Chapel Hill. So let's say you received a score of 3 in your calculus, and you would need at least a score of 3 to receive credit for the calculus course here at UNC Chapel Hill. So if you, as long as you present that score, we will give you credit for it. Now, with the physics, you want to be very careful with that because you would have to contact the physics department individually, and there is a telephone number on our website where you can call them and then they can tell you what score you will need to get credit at UNC Chapel Hill. Most of the physics courses, unless you have a really high score, you will have to go back and take the labs, even though you may get credit for the actual lecture part of it. Yes?
I have a question about organic chemistry, the first one. At UNCG, it's a 4-credit course, but it's not including a lab. The second one has the lab.
Okay. And it's a 4-semester hour course at UNCG, and it does not have a lab?
Correct.
Okay. I will talk with you after the session, but I do have a worksheet for UNCG. They do offer a course that's equivalent to our Organic Chemistry 1, and what happens is we do not have a lab here at UNC Chapel Hill for Organic Chemistry 1, so you're going to be fine.
Well, I went to that webpage and did the transferring, and according to the transfer, it was their chemistry 351 for organic. And that's what I signed up for.
It was a 351 at UNCG? Okay. Yes, as long as it transfers to UNC Chapel Hill as the chemistry 261, that's what we're looking for, and you're fine with the first semester.
I have a graduate level organic 1 and 2 combined course. That transfer.
We will probably have to, we'll have to look at it on an individual basis. Do you have a degree in chemistry already?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I took an organic course from Johns Hopkins University that was a graduate level organic 1 and 2 combined.
What we want to do is look at your whole academic background, and then we would make a decision based on that. Yes?
I have a computer engineering background, and I got my bachelor's degree nearly 9 years ago. I was wondering if those equivalencies would transfer as well.
They will. We do not have a time limit on courses transferring to UNC Chapel Hill. We do have a grade requirement of C- or better for all of the math and science courses. Yes?
Do we have anybody where we can sit down and kind of compare those two? Like the prereq and the courses that you took prior to that?
What we highly recommend is that students try to utilize the information that we have on the website with the transfer equivalency screen. Like I said, if for some reason your courses are not listed there, then definitely give us a call and we'd be happy. You can probably 9 times out of 10 give us the information and we can tell you how it will transfer. And then if we cannot evaluate it, we will refer you to the Office of Undergraduate Admissions where usually you have to submit the catalog course descriptions for review. Okay? Andrew and I will be available after the session today, so if you have individual questions regarding courses that you've completed, we'd be happy to answer your questions, okay? Are there any more? Yes?
I'm a little confused with your prerequisites for Chem 241 and Physics 105. One says only required of UNC Chapel Hill students, and one says not required of UNC students completing Chem 241.
Okay, that's a very good question. If you are a student at UNC Chapel Hill, you have the option of taking Chemistry 241 and 241 lab along with Physics 104 lab. For students transferring their chemistry courses from another college, you do not have that option. You have to complete 2 semesters of Physics 1 and 2 with lab.
You wouldn't have to do then the Chem 241?
No. Students transferring from another college or institution would only be required to take the 2 semesters of physics, not the 241 and 241 lab. Yes?
Transferring to UNC Chapel Hill, do you take
If you're transferring to UNC Chapel Hill, you have that option of taking 241 lab and Physics 104, 104 lab, or the 2 semesters of physics. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to talk in a few minutes about GPAs and PCATs to consider, but I wanted to first review a couple of things that you need to know when you're applying. The first is the health requirements. We have a couple of health requirements, vaccination requirements, TB skin test, varicella, hepatitis B, nothing out of the ordinary. But the thing that we want you to know is that we do require the hepatitis B 3-shot series, and that takes 6 months to complete. If you have completed that in the past, that is wonderful. We'll just need to have official documentation that you've completed the series. We do titer everyone, draw blood and look at the titer to make sure you do have immunity against hepatitis B once you start the program, but we do have to have official documentation of the 3-step series. A titer is not enough. So if you've had it in the past, usually clinics are required to keep records for 20 years, so you can go back and get your records. But for those students that have not had the hepatitis B vaccination, that is who I really want to make sure understands this requirement. It does mean that you would need to start that series before you would be notified about an admissions decision. So the latest that it's due mid-July, so you would need to have that started by mid-January. So if you're planning to apply and you've never had a hepatitis B vaccination, I would highly, highly encourage you to make an appointment now to get that started so you don't miss that deadline. We do rescind admission decisions if you've not completed the hepatitis B vaccination series by our mid-July deadline. And that's because even the first semester, we start pricking fingers and working with blood first semester. The other thing is Varicella Vaccine or chickenpox. We used to allow students to say, you know, to write a paragraph when they recalled they had chickenpox and so forth, but student health will not allow us to do that anymore. So you need to have one of two things. One, if you have had chickenpox in the past, you can just get a titer drawn for chickenpox and that's enough. Or if you've never had chickenpox, which most people have either had chickenpox or have had the vaccination, but if you fall into that category that has not had the vaccination, you would need to be vaccinated. So we either need a titer if you've had it before, proof of vaccination if you've had a vaccination, okay? And that's a two-shot series, so that doesn't take as long. So the really big one's hepatitis B. Any questions about that? Okay, and then how many people have heard of or may be interested in the UNC Elizabeth City State University Partnership Program? Okay, so we do have a partnership program with Elizabeth City State University, and for those of you that like to find out more information, please come and talk to us afterwards as well. But this was developed, this partnership program, in an effort to attract practitioners to the northeastern corridor of the state where we have a big pharmacist shortage. So Elizabeth City State University, we admit up to 15 students each year to that campus. And most of the instruction, well, all of the instruction, most of the instruction is live video teleconference. The majority is originating from here, and that's why we have these screens and the microphones and all of that, and it's sent to Elizabeth City. And that's why you have microphones on your desk. So if you're a student on the Chapel Hill campus or the Elizabeth City campus, in order to ask a question, you have to press the microphone so people on both campuses can hear. But your lab sections there are live. You have a TA there live, it's not VTC'd, and then some instruction originates in Elizabeth City. to Chapel Hill. So if you're interested in that program, some people that maybe like a smaller town, more one-on-one interaction with faculty members. We have 3 pharmacy faculty members there currently and an AHEC faculty member out there. Or those that may prefer a smaller class size, that's something you may want to consider, and we'll be happy to talk with you about that. You do have to submit a campus preference on the supplemental application. So this is not a trick. We really, we're not trying to trick you, or we don't really want you to second guess what you check. We just want you to check where you want to go. So there will be 4 options. 1, you want to apply to Chapel Hill campus only, 2, the Elizabeth City campus only, or I prefer the Chapel Hill campus, but I would consider Elizabeth City, and vice versa. So please, if you think you may be interested at all, check our website. There's a link to the Elizabeth City website. You could talk with someone there at the partnership program and maybe even visit beforehand, but we encourage you to really make an informed decision because we can't change that campus preference after you submit that supplemental application. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on to the good stuff. So what do we consider in the admissions decisions? We really look at each student holistically. We don't have strict formulas, or we're not looking for one particular type of student. We value diversity and leadership. We are in the business of providing not just great pharmacists, but we want leaders in pharmacy, people that are going to be leaders in whatever area of pharmacy they want to work, whether it's at a school of pharmacy, if it's in their community, drugstore, wherever. We want leaders in wherever they practice and work. So we're looking for a lot of different things. Let me start out with GPA. Obviously, we want folks that can handle the curriculum. It's a lot of math and science and so forth. Our average GPA for the past several years has been a 3.5 GPA overall. And I tell students that to be competitive, you really need to have a GPA above a 3.0. 3.0, 3.2, somewhere in there. That doesn't mean if you have a 2.9, don't apply. It just means that our average is a 3.5, and the closer you are to that average, the more competitive you'll probably be. Okay? So if you're not there, don't get discouraged just because of that. We do look at degrees. So let's say one student has a biochemistry degree and has a 3.1 or 3.0. Another student has a non-science degree and maybe that GPA is higher. We take into consideration the rigor of the courses that you've taken that calculated that GPA. So not to worry if you have a difficult major and you feel like your grades were not, the science courses were a little challenging. We do take that into consideration. Mm-hmm.
Do you look at, I have multiple degrees, and for instance, my undergraduate degree, GPA is not the greatest. My graduate school GPA was off the charts. So which would you look at or consider more? Okay.
We get this question a lot. The GPA that will be calculated that we initially look at is your overall. It takes everything into consideration. We also pull out the math and science. But we do have students that maybe had a rocky start first year of college, or maybe their undergraduate degree, they just weren't serious, and now they have a master's degree in another area or taken prerequisite courses years later, and we look at that. We would not automatically deny you because your GPA fell below a certain range. We look at the whole transcript individually. Mm-hmm.
I have a question, but what is a realistic GPA and prerequisites needed to get accepted into the program? And is any weight preference given for a university versus a community college?
Okay. The question is the realistic GPA, and I think I may have mentioned that before, in that I would say a realistic GPA is above a 3.0 to 3.2 GPA. Our average is a 3.5, okay? So it would be somewhere around a 3.0 or a 3.2. Obviously, the higher you are, the more competitive you are. If you went to a community college, we certainly encourage you to have prerequisite courses there, and we look at those very strongly as well. It really doesn't matter where you complete your prerequisite courses, but again, we do look at the rigor, if you took a full course load, or if you took courses and were working full-time. We also look at what type of courses you took and how that contributed to the GPA.
Another question also. For someone who is 1 or 2 prerequisites short but got an undergraduate degree a long time ago, what would you recommend in the context of the best way to get into Eisherman School of Pharmacy that someone take those courses?
Okay, so if you've completed some of the courses but not all, I would recommend that you take the courses that you're missing to complete those prerequisites and do very well on the PCAT. If you've taken prerequisite courses in the past from a previous degree, and maybe you didn't do so well, there were a lot of C's and maybe a D in there. If that's the case, it's all an individual. It's hard to speak because there's so many different types of possibilities, but if in the math and science it's a lot of C's, in that case you might want to consider retaking some of the math and science prerequisites. Sometimes we'll see students that have all C's in their chemistries and biologies and then A's in these other courses, you know, English and history and other courses, and their total GPA will look good, but we pull out those math and science because it's so important. We know that performance in math and science in that undergrad program is going to predict performance in our program, so it's very important to make sure that students have a good grasp of the math and science before they come into the program. Sometimes we'll get the question, well, what if I made a D in a prerequisite or F? Does that mean I'm never going to get in? And that doesn't necessarily mean you won't get in. If you have, we understand and the committee understands that sometimes we have things that get in the way of our college career and have a bad semester. If you do have a D or an F in a prerequisite course, of course, you'd have to retake it. And we would expect an A no lower than a B when you retook it. It's very important that when you retake that class that you make a really good grade. We don't like to see a C or a C minus when you retake it. That doesn't help your case a whole lot. So if you have, one bad grade, that's fine. If you have several Ds, several Fs, that really does not look favorably for you. And sometimes we do see people with the overall GPA that fits within those guidelines, but when you look at the transcript, there can be several Ds or Fs, and that's not good.
I have a question. What about for classes that have been withdrawn? There's a W on the transcript. Okay.
If you've been withdrawn from a class, we don't look at that necessarily. I mean, if you had a gap in your transcript, we'd question why you had a gap or you weren't in a course. But for a withdrawn course, we would not penalize you for that.
I have another question. If our undergraduate GPA wasn't the greatest overall, will retaking some prerequisites now and getting better grades override that?
Yes. If you have a previous undergrad degree and GPA is not that hot, and you think, well, I really want to go to pharmacy school, what you can do is retake some of those prereqs, and a lot of people will do that at the community college or at a local university, and that does help. Again, we look at transcripts individually. We don't just look at a certain GPA cutoff and deny everyone below that. We look at each student individually. Okay? So let me move on to our PCAT. How many people have taken the PCAT already? How many people, that's about 5 in our audience, how many people plan to take it in October? And has the date this month passed? Is there? Okay, how many this month? Okay, right. So the PCAT, the scores are confusing. There are several scores reported. What I want you to write down is that our average composite percentile score is 85 percentile. Okay, that's composite percentiles, 85 percentile. And I tell students that you need to have above a 70 to 75 percentile to be competitive. There are also percentiles for each subsection that you take 5 subsections. There's chemistry and analytical or math, there's reading, there's verbal, and so forth. We look at all of those. We would like for you to have above a 50, 60 percentile in all of those subsections. So if your composite PCAT is 75 percentile, but your chemistry is 25, that's not good, because some people can carry that composite percentile by their performance in verbal and reading and so forth. And we know that it's important for students to be able to, their performance on that PCAT in math and chemistry really predicts their success in the first few years of the program. So chemistry and math, the higher you are, and I would say above 60 percentile in chemistry and math particularly, is where you need to be. So look first at the composite PCAT, above 70 to 75 percentile, and then look at your subsection scores. And chemistry and math need to be above 60 percentile.
If we haven't taken like any organic chemistry or analytical, do you take that into consideration if we take the PCAT before we even are in those classes?
No. What I've been told is that you need at least a half a semester of organic to I guess, cover the organic portion on the PCAT. So you need to have taken, you need to have taken the PCAT by the October date at least. If you take the PCAT by the January date for the very first time, you're only considered for wait list because we don't get those scores back. So in someone in that situation, what I recommend to students is if you want to take it in the summer, take it once, see how you do. Even if you don't have organic, see how you do and how close you are. Then you probably will need to take it in October when you have half a semester of organic and analytical. But it certainly doesn't hurt if you are willing to take it a couple of times. Now, after 3 times, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot better. But if you take it one time, that gives you an idea of what the test is like. And we do have, there are some review books on PCAT that I would encourage. I think I saw someone in the audience that had a PCAT, Kaplan PCAT review book. And some of those will help. So the PCAT, I cannot stress this enough, it's just as important as GPA. Some pharmacy schools do not consider it as strongly as we do, but it's just as important as GPA.
If you're applying as a non-degree applicant, would you have your PCAT considered more heavily than your GPA, or would that not do anything? We
look at both equally, GPA and PCAT. I think we had a question earlier about what if one's a little bit lower or what have you. We look at, again, the overall picture. So if your GPA is on the lower side, we want your PCAT to be really good. Or if your PCAT's on the lower side, we want your GPA to be good. And those two balance each other out. But if both of them are below our average or below our cutoff point, you know, that's not good. But sometimes we'll see somebody with a 2.9 GPA and a 95% PCAT. So the GPA is a little on the low side, but that PCAT evens that out. So we look at both of them, and we always look at both the GPA and PCAT equally. Another question we get a lot is, do you look at my highest PCAT score, or which PCAT score, if I take it 3 times and I bombed it the first time, does that hurt me? Everything really in the PCAT plays in your favor. We look at the highest PCAT score, and we look at all of the subsets. So if one time you made a lower score on chemistry and you took it again and made a higher score, we look at all of that. And if you took it 5 times, we really don't care as long as you meet those numbers that we're looking for. So we wouldn't penalize you if you took it before you had that organic and made a bad grade. We don't we wouldn't penalize you for that. We always look at the highest score and review all the subset scores each time you take it. And it is important when you sign up for the PCAT, you will send those scores directly to PharmCast. And even if you take it in October, and the deadline is November 2nd for our application, PharmCast then sends us the PCAT scores. So please do not send your PCAT scores to us. And it's okay to complete and submit that supplemental application before you take the PCAT if you already have a date in mind. If you take it in October and you think, oh, I didn't do as well as I wanted to do, and you want to retake it in January, that's okay. We only say wait list if you take it for the very first time ever in January, but you could email our admissions office and just say, just want to let you know I'm retaking that PCAT, and we'll put a note in your file to look for that score. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Do you require your prospective students to have working experience in the field of pharmacy?
Okay. So the other things that we look at, I mentioned we wanted leaders in pharmacy and well-rounded students. And one thing we look at is on that application in PharmCast, you have to list your work experience and organization experience, volunteer, leadership, and so forth. And so work experience in pharmacy is not required, but it is recommended. We do like to see people that know what they're getting into, that have really thought about this and know why they're interested in pharmacy and so forth. So volunteer experience in pharmacy or work, and it doesn't matter what area of pharmacy. We don't prefer community, hospital, research. We really don't have a preference there, but that does look good. Now, some people that are working full-time and are going back to take their prereqs and apply at a later time may not be able to do that, and that's okay. We look at other things. We look at your work experience in the past, volunteer experience, any type of offices you've held, volunteered with, your church, Boy Scouts, whatever. We look at everything. So not just pharmacy, so please do list everything in your leadership experience. The other thing we look at is your personal statement that's in PharmCast. So please make sure you proofread that and you write it and kind of step away a little while and think about it and then go back and think about it some more. We're not looking for a certain type of applicant. Again, we love diversity. We want all types of applicants with all types of backgrounds, all age ranges. We think that makes our program stronger. So look at that personal statement and really think about why you want to be a pharmacist and fill that out. Now, sometimes people will use that space to explain a problem in their transcript or a concern. Maybe they had a semester that was, their GPA dropped a little bit, maybe they had a death in the family or they moved or something happened, and you can use that personal statement to explain that as well. Do you have a question?
Yes, I just had a question regarding work experience. What percentage of the admitted students have had previous experience versus program being a little bit more geared towards?
Okay, you mean work experience in a pharmacy or just?
Just actually in general. I noticed that there's a wide range between 20 to 40 admitted students.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if there was a vastly higher percentage of the students recently completing undergraduate work or if there's an equal number.
I don't know that. I can't tell you that percentage off the top of my head. Let's see, 65% have a previous 4-year degree. I would probably say at least a third have been out in the workforce. It may be more than that. Kim, do you have as the guesstimate, but I would say at least a third, if not more. We have a lot of students, and our current students are going to come up and talk, but we have students with families, that are married, have children, and then we have people right out of, 2 years of undergrad, so there's a wide range. But that work experience does help. Okay. I mentioned that we'll notify you in January through March, and by the end of March, you should know your admission decision at that time. And the interview, everybody wants to know about the interview, and I'm going to end here. The interview, everybody that is admitted does have to interview, and we interview somewhere around 250, 300 students a year. We receive approximately 850 to 900 applicants. We interview 250 to 300 and admit 155 on this campus. 142 on this campus and 15 on the Elizabeth City campus. So if you're invited for an interview, some people have made the mistake of thinking, well, I'm in. As long as I don't bomb this interview, I'm in. But because we do value and understand the importance of communication skills in pharmacy, the interview counts just as much as GPA and PCAT. So I would encourage you to come, and it will be an interview with a couple of faculty members. And they're not going to ask you anything you can't answer. They ask you about past situations, and it shouldn't be a scary experience, although most people are nervous, but it's not intended to be like that. They're not going to grill you. They just want to know why you're interested in pharmacy and how you've handled situations in the past, and get to know you and to see if you're a good fit for our program, and vice versa. Are we a good fit for you? They're there to answer questions for you as well. So I would practice your interview skills if you don't have much practice with interviewing, because that is just as important as your grades. So I want to make that clear. And again, we notify people via email. So any questions before we move on? Okay. Anything else? We're going to ask Dr. Scott Singleton to come forward, and he's going to talk a little bit about the PharmD PhD program for those of you that may be interested in research.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Singleton. I'm a professor here in the School of Pharmacy, and I'm in the Division of Medicinal Chemistry and Natural Products. So I'm interested in a lot of things, including educating folks like you, prospective pharmacists like you, but also in research. So I'm interested particularly in how antibiotics work, on a personal level, and how they're actually failing to work, and what we can do to discover sort of new tools to help us overcome that. But I'm not here to talk to you very much about that today. What I want to do is to sort of maybe broaden your perspective or your vision of what we do here in the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. So you guys have gotten all sorts of practical information about how to apply and you know, how to prepare yourself to actually get in. What I want to talk to you about is sort of what happens when you come. What are some of the exciting opportunities? And I think one of the very best things about our School of Pharmacy is that you're really going to be interacting with not just sort of prospective student leaders, people who will develop into leaders in pharmacy, but actually people who are leading pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences right now. That is, people who are developing the new knowledge, the new technology, the new skills, the new analytical tools that actually advance the science of pharmacy as well as the practice of pharmacy in the clinic. And so what I want to do is spend a few minutes with you, just a few minutes, talking to you about the research opportunities here at the school. I'm going to couch this in terms of a relatively new combined degree program that we offer. That degree program combines the PharmD, which you already know a lot about, with the PhD. How many of you know what a PhD is? How many of you have heard of that before? Yeah? Good. Anybody here ever considering applying to graduate school to get a PhD exclusively? One person. Thank you, sir. What I want to do is sort of then kind of set the backdrop for what a PhD is all about. But one thing that I want to make clear from the beginning, and hopefully I'll be able to come back to this, or I'll remember to come back to this at the end, is that the research opportunities at the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy are not just sort of formalized into a PhD program, but actually our PharmD students sort of routinely participate in the research that goes on sort of across this campus. Everything from the very sort of most fundamental aspects of drug discovery, the things that I might be interested in, all the way through research that deals with interacting with patients in the clinic, to post-marketing research, understanding whether patients are following the guidelines on their medications and that sort of thing, for example. And so you can do that in a very sort of informal way, but you can also do it in a more formal way. We have an honors program here that actually rigorously inculcates students into the research program and allows you to participate with other students to give seminars and practice together and really get into it. And if you take it sort of to the full extreme, you might be interested then in a combined PharmD PhD program. So let me tell you a little bit about that. All right, so just briefly, what is PhD? Well, as you know, this is an abbreviation basically for Doctor of Philosophy. It really comes kind of from the Latin that means a teacher of philosophy. And this is sort of the most advanced academic degree that most universities offer. And traditionally, it's been kind of the ticket that allows one to become a professor in a university setting, someone like myself. There are different kinds of doctors as well. As you know, there are doctors of pharmacy and doctors of medicine, for example, that have reached sort of the pinnacle of the professional training, and they can be professors as well. But the PhD is kind of a more academic side, sort of a less technical, some would say a less useful side, and hopefully I'm going to teach you that that's not fully true. May I have the next page? So the main thing about the PhD is that actually it's about research, and that's kind of the main story that I wanted to leave you with today. But some reasons to think about research in general in the School of Pharmacy and about PhD sort of especially are kind of shown here. So PhDs, or people who are interested in that, are people who are always interested in learning. Inside the classroom, outside the classroom, in the lab, in the hospital, in the clinic, etc. Some other great things about doing research at this level is that you get to work one-on-one with a mentor. So as a pharmacy student, you'll spend a fair amount of time like this, okay? And you'll spend a fair amount of time with patients in clinical or hospital settings, for example. But in the research kind of laboratory research clinic, you get to spend a lot of time one-on-one with somebody like me, only hopefully somebody smarter and better looking than me. But you sort of get the idea, right? The other sort of cool aspect about doing research is that you're really fundamentally creating the new knowledge, right? You're sort of at the forefront of that creation. And it sort of brings you to a very wonderful time in your life where you transition from a consumer of knowledge, which is sort of the definition of a student, to the creator of knowledge. And that's a lot of fun. And along the way, then you transition from sort of being taught to self-teaching. You transition from problem solving on your own to teaching others. We only complete the research cycle when we actually take what we've learned and teach somebody else about it, right? That's how that knowledge gets out there. And then at sort of the pinnacle of all this, the PhDs are really the ones who ultimately direct the sorts of investigations that are done. And so that's a really good sort of pragmatic reason to think about a PhD, is so that you can be the one who tells everybody else what the interesting questions are. Wendy? So in pharmaceutical sciences, I probably don't have to go very far to convince you that this is an interesting area, because after all, this is sort of the science, the knowledge creation engine behind the practice of pharmacy. And so, of course, in the pharmaceutical sciences, we're interested in how drugs work, right? And so in particular, relative to things like surgery or devices, we're interested in sort of the medicines themselves. And I've sort of listed some kinds of questions that we'd be interested in our research projects here. What should we be thinking about in order to address an unmet need? If our antibiotics are failing, what can we do differently to make sure that they continue to work, for example? How do we make new drugs? How do we make drugs or drug candidates better? Can we sort of get them where they need to go more efficiently? Can we make them safer? How can we use these medications and these medications that we're developing to affect better patient outcomes? And how can we use information on how patients are using their meds, or how can we affect policy changes that will make medications more effective for patients? And all those kinds of laboratory or research questions lead to the knowledge that actually changes the routines of clinical practice. And so pharmaceutical sciences is sort of fundamentally at that edge, connecting laboratory research investigations to clinical or practice investigations. So a few facts about what it would be like sort of to be in the PhD program. Why would you consider this as an adjunct to the PharmD program? Well, PhD students actually receive full financial support. They get a full stipend. It's currently $22,500 a year. Their tuition is paid, their health insurance is paid, and so forth. So while you're actually formally enrolled in a PhD program, you shouldn't be incurring much debt unless your housing costs are a lot higher than mine are. Right. The whole program typically takes a student about 5 years. That would be a sort of bachelor's level student entering a PhD program. And what I'll get to in a few minutes is that students who are combining the PharmD with the PhD actually save some time. So you do a full PharmD, and along the way you're sort of fulfilling some of those requirements necessary for the PhD, so that when you transition to the PhD program, you can do that part in a shorter period of time, about 3 or 3.5 years. Graduates from this program, be they PhD or PharmD PhD, sort of find all sorts of interesting occupations in the school and outside the school in the world beyond. They become leaders in academia, they take on industry positions, patent positions, all sorts of things are possible working in the pharmaceutical industry or related areas. And of course, I probably don't have to do much more to convince you that this is a terrific area in which to do those kinds of investigations. You look on the Chapel Hill campus alone, and there's basically every kind of research you could imagine going on here, lots of people to learn from. And of course, you combine that with our neighbors here in the Research Triangle, between the industrial partners over in the park to NC State to Duke University. This is sort of a great place in general to be and to be learning. Wendy? So very briefly, the School of Pharmacy operates a graduate program, a sort of research program called Pharmaceutical Sciences that I've talked to you about. And it's important to note that at the bottom of the screen there, you can see that our school is sort of fundamentally divided into 5 divisions. And those divisions are each sort of responsible for part of this graduate education program. And those 5 divisions also collaborate together to offer the sort of classroom, laboratory, and clinical aspects of the PharmD as well. But what you can see over on the left side there under PhD is that there are sort of 4 different PhD granting divisions. And I want to focus just a little bit on the research that goes on in those different divisions. So right now, if you take those 4 divisions together, we have about 100 graduate students, and you can see they're sort of divided not quite equally among the 4 divisions. There's sort of different numbers of faculty and different number of students in each of those divisions. Wendy? And the way these divisions are sort of organized kind of follows a kind of drug discovery and development progression, as you can see on this slide. So folks like me over on the far left there in the kind of magenta box, interested in the very earliest stages of drug discovery, thinking about what sorts of biomolecules should be targets for intervention with pharmaceuticals, for example. How do we validate that target? How do we make sure that if we could intercept it with a drug molecule that it would actually do something? Those kinds of things. How do we make drugs better? How do we introduce modifications, for example, that would change the efficacy or change the toxicity profile of a particular drug? Those are things that we're interested on that side. As you sort of move along, once you have the targets for the drugs and you have some lead compounds that give you some confidence in that target, then you have to begin to really understand whether that drug is going to get where it needs to go, whether it's active there, whether it gets metabolized to something good or bad, or simply gets destroyed by metabolic processes. And that's sort of the purview of molecular pharmaceutics in the second box. Scientists in that area currently are using all sorts of modern nanoscience and nanotechnology approaches to deliver molecules better, more specifically to the sites where they're needed to treat specific kinds of cancers in specific regions, for example. All right. The next stage of development, once you sort of have one of these now optimized molecules that targets the biomolecule of interest, you then have to go figure out whether it really works in patients. Right up to this point, maybe you've done these experiments in a test tube, or maybe at best in a laboratory animal model or something like that. But eventually you actually have to test these ideas in human patients and make sure that things are safe and effective. And that in general is called sort of translational research, translating laboratory information into clinical information. And that's where this sort of third group, pharmacotherapy and experimental therapeutics, comes into play. And so they're very interested in translating these sort of basic science discoveries into the clinic, and then into sort of evaluating the clinical outcomes at a first pass. And so there's a whole group now that's interested in how the genetic makeup of a particular individual will cause that individual to respond differently to different medicines. And so this is called pharmacogenomics, or individualized therapy in general. And this is all under this rubric of pharmacotherapy and experimental therapeutics. And then if you imagine there's kind of a stage that's missing there, and that's the clinic. We've discovered and validated something, we've shown that it works, we've proven it, and then we go actually sell it, right? We market it and put it in patients, and that's where the pharmacists come into play. And after that, sort of in the post-marketing analysis, we need to understand whether the drug really was effective and whether it was safe, whether patients are able to follow the instructions for the medications, whether there are policy aspects about what Medicare or Medicaid will pay for or cover that impacts whether a medicine's effective. And all that sort of post-marketing surveillance information, the pharmacoeconomics part is at the far right side in gray. That's called pharmaceutical outcomes and policy. So the school's research interests span the sort of complete spectrum from very basic discovery all the way through translating into the clinic, and then actually post-marketing analysis in pharmacoeconomics. All right, so just a little bit more about this PharmD PhD program. This is, technically it's a sequential program, not a truly combined program. And what that means is you actually get 2 full-scale degrees in this program, the PharmD and the PhD. The curricula are not watered down in any way to accommodate this. You actually fulfill all the requirements for full licensure, and then you fulfill all the requirements to become an independent investigator as a PhD. The way sort of time is saved along the way is that you can take courses that would apply to PhD credit while you're taking PharmD courses. So some of the elective course opportunities that you have could be used to get credit towards a PhD. The other thing that you do is you actually get involved in research during your sort of PharmD curriculum days. And that sort of helps you get into the process and actually develop a project with a mentor along the way. And I want to sort of pause there and say, whether or not you are really interested in this kind of full-scale 2-degree program, I encourage you to think about research opportunities because, as I mentioned before, you don't have to be formally involved in the PhD program, right? You can do this. Any PharmD student can get involved. If you were to do this combined degree, this sort of overlap of taking credit while you're a PharmD student and getting involved in research early saves 12 to 18 months off of that sort of 5-year program that I talked about for the PhD. Wendy? All right, so how do you know if you'd be interested in research in pharmaceutical sciences? Probably most of you are not enrolled in a department of pharmacy right now or a department of pharmaceutical sciences. Probably you're more interested or know about sort of terms or phrases or department names that look like this: chemistry, drug discovery, psychology, engineering, sociology, economics, for example. These are all the sort of things, and this is just a flavor of some of them, these are all the sorts of things that researchers here in the Eshelman School of Pharmacy are interested in. And so if you're interested in those things and interested in learning more about it, then you might very well be interested in research in the school. All right, so how would you know whether you're really interested in an area, and if so, specifically what area? Let's say you wanted to go check me out, right, and find out what my research is all about. Well, the web is sort of the best place to start, right? So you could go sort of see what I say on my web page that I'm interested in. And then what you can do is go to the library or use the internet to look up some papers in that field, maybe even the papers that I wrote, all right? And the idea here, though, is not to read them right after you've had a cup of coffee in the morning or 24 ounces of Mountain Dew or whatever it happens to be. The idea is to pick a time that's sort of late at the end of your day. If you're an old guy like me, it's probably about 10 o'clock, right after the kids have worn me out. For some of you, that might be like 3 a.m., I'm not sure, right? But pick a time that's kind of late at the end of your day and start reading the papers, all right? If you stay awake while you're reading them, that's a pretty good sign that that's something that you're interested in, right? If you fall asleep immediately, you can sort of pass it on. Right? The most sort of important point, though, is to get involved, right? If you find something that you're interested in that doesn't put you to sleep immediately at 10 p.m. or at 3 a.m. or whatever it happens to be, that's something that you should probably talk to that researcher more about. And hopefully, if you come to the UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy, you can identify some folks like that that you'd like to get involved with. And I encourage you to do so. We all answer email. We all have open doors. We'd love to talk to you about research opportunities. Right, so I mentioned before that there are 4 different divisions, and I mentioned this idea of getting in contact with people sort of early and often. You can see my lovely picture up there. That's who I am again, Scott Singleton. I'm the Director of Graduate Studies for the PhD program, but then each of these divisions has a separate divisional director as well, and you can see those individuals listed here. And all this information is available on our website, Wendy, which is here, and I think this was actually being pulled up by Andrew right at the very beginning. If you go to pharmacy.unc.edu to the Programs tab, there's a little PhD button, and you can sort of click on there and get not only information about the PhD, but about the sort of research program more generally. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about research and about the PharmD PhD curriculum. Do any of you have any questions that I can answer, or anybody in pajamas listening online? Yes, please. Will I make the slide deck available on the website? I certainly can. Are we able to do that? Yes, we'll do that. Thank you. That's a great question, a great suggestion. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is really related. I kind of have a vague question about the differences between the different programs.
Okay.
I don't know if this is right, but the MS, is that kind of more administrative? And then the PharmD, I guess, is kind of just the general pharmacist, like going into the other programs?
It's a great question. I should have made that more clear. One clear difference between the MS program that I really didn't talk about is that that's a program for post-PharmD. So students who've already enrolled in the PharmD program can then enroll in the master's program. And this is sort of like a hospital pharmacy administration program. And so it's to sort of take you into that specific area of being able to administer, you know, a group of pharmacists in a hospital clinical setting. So that's what the master's degree. And there's relatively less emphasis there on research. There's some research involved and more emphasis sort of on learning administrative and business skills, as well as continuing your development as a clinical pharmacist. Does that answer the question that you had? Okay. Other questions? Please.
Is it possible to complete a residency while in the PharmD PhD program?
Ooh, that's a good question. Is it possible to complete a residency? I don't want to say the answer is absolutely no. What I can say is that the PhD aspect of the program is really kind of a full-time commitment. And so by and large, that would be a very challenging thing to do. Now, that being said, one of our programs, I mentioned this sort of translational sciences group, pharmacotherapy and experimental therapeutics. They actually have a clinical track for their PhD program, which I don't believe it would allow the students to formally complete a residency, but it would allow them to continue in their clinical experience as well as sort of moving on into the research program. So there are ways to combine the two. It's also the case that this Master's of Science in Health Pharmacy Administration that I didn't talk so much about, actually part of that master's program is a residency program. So that master's program is a 2-year program that includes a 1-year residency. And so it's a different program in that it's not a research-based program, but it does allow for that sort of combination. Did that answer the question as far as we can tell? Okay. Other questions? Yes, please.
I remember you saying something about the sequential PharmD PhD program, and that took about 5 years or so. Is that after you complete your PharmD degree? That's
right. So the way the program works is right now, you don't really have to worry about it. You just enroll in the PharmD program. And then you can start thinking about research as soon as you're on campus, basically. But so you'd really be focused on PharmD program. Maybe you would start doing a little research on the side during your first year, maybe during the summer between your first and second year. And then it's really not until later in your second and particularly your third year where you begin to have some elective time in the PharmD curriculum that you would begin to think about really transitioning into the PhD program. And so you would essentially complete the PharmD in 4 years. Along the way, sort of partway along the way, you'd start doing some of the PhD work, but you wouldn't formally be in the PhD program. So then after that 4 years of PharmD, you would then become formally enrolled in the PhD program, and that would then take another 3.5 years to complete a PhD after the PharmD. Did that sort of specify? Okay, good question. Was there another hand over here? Okay, great. Anything else? I think we have students who are going to be available to answer questions about the PharmD program more specifically, but if there's anything else, I'd be happy to. All right, well, thank you all for your attention this afternoon. We're delighted you're here at Carolina this afternoon and hope we'll see applications in your faces again real soon. Wendy, thank you.
Now is probably the most exciting part of our program. And yeah, that's true. That's the second most exciting, I guess, is when we have our current students. If you guys will please come down, and I think this is the most interactive part of the session. So they're going to come up and introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their background. And this is a time for you to ask questions about the curriculum, about our faculty, about student life, about working, and just find out what it's like to be a pharmacy student here at UNC and to see if this might be a good fit for you. So I'll remind you to please press the microphone if you have a question, and thanks to you who've been doing that. And we'll answer any questions now, and then if you'd like to take a tour after that, the students will be up here and we'll be able to take you around for a tour as well.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Steve Galantis. I just finished my first year here. I guess a little bit about myself. I graduated from the University of Florida and had a degree in chemistry. And I'm out here in Carolina now. So.
Hi, my name is Jane Ravoyo. I also finished my first year. I got a bachelor's degree from Duke University in biology. I did 4 years in graduate school and a PhD program before I decided that research wasn't really my thing, and decided I wanted to do a more clinical thing, so decided on pharmacy. I guess I'm enjoying the clinical thing a lot more than the research thing. So.
Oh, I had the mic. Sorry. My name is Colin Bernstein, and I also just completed my first year here. I got a bachelor's degree in biology from Carolina before I decided to come here. And I love it so far. It's a challenge, but it's great. So, questions? Changing from like undergrad lifestyle to graduate student lifestyle. It was just a kind of more focused on doing your homework actually, but.
I thought the biggest challenge for me was getting used to, interacting with patients and, learning what sort of things that they're interested in hearing and how they're interested in hearing it. Coming from like a research background, you don't really interact with people all that much. But we get a lot of practice with that. We interact, with our classmates, and we do get some opportunities to work with pharmacists and with patients, so we learn everything we need to know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jane too, but I guess the big thing for me was picking up and moving 10 hours away from home. So, yeah, that was the biggest thing that I was worried about coming up here.
Okay. Do any of you have any hospital or pharmaceutical experience prior to entering the program?
No.
Actually, yeah, we were just talking about that, and then none of us did prior to coming here. We have had a hospital experience though over the summer that we just completed. It's part of the experiential program here, and we just spent a month working at a hospital pharmacy. So got in that practice there. Yes, go ahead.
I have two questions. Did anybody work during their first year of pharmacy school? And also, if you don't mind explaining, what's a typical day like for you, any of you, like while you were in your first year?
I didn't work while I was in classes. I guess it's really just kind of a choice. I decided that I didn't want to. I wanted to spend time focusing on classes. And then I guess what a typical day is like, you wake up and come in here. This is like our classroom our first year, and I guess it's kind of nice because the instructors rotated in and out of here. We didn't have to go anywhere like an undergrad. You get breaks in between classes. You have opportunities after classes are over to go over to the health sciences library, which is right across the street, if you want to study before you go home. And you can also spend your lunchtime doing that, but I kind of like to eat, so.
I had a job as a graduate research assistant last year, so I was still doing some research. It was in sort of a policy field. But this year I'm planning on, I have a part-time job in a hospital pharmacy. A lot of our classmates had jobs, working like 10, 15 hours a week. Like Steve said, I guess that's kind of a typical day. We had class starting at 8 or 9 in the morning and going through sometime in the mid-afternoon, and then a couple hours of homework in the evening. So.
I also worked after classes, I guess last year. I'd held a babysitting job for it was between 12 and a half to 15 hours a week. But the first year schedule last year was really conducive to that. It was like you got out at 3 and then your afternoons were free, but can't say it's going to happen in the future.
What we recommend from the Office of Student Services is that the first year you come in and not work. And if you do decide to work, we recommend a maximum of 10 to 15 hours a week, because it's very demanding if you're switching from undergrad to graduate work, or moving to a new place. There's a lot of adjustments. So we want to make sure you focus on school. And 99% of the time, people that don't do well in our curriculum is because of things that happened. They're prepared, but maybe they're working too much, or things have come up in their life. So we would advise you to come in expecting not to work that first year, and if you feel like you can handle it, maybe getting a part-time job, and then PY 2 year and 3 year, I think more students start to work. So I just would discourage you, if you think you're going to work 30 and 40 hours a week and go to school, that's just not reasonable. Some people do it, but I would say maybe 1 person to 2 per year, and it's just not reasonable at all expectation.
Y'all said that interact with patients. How does a pharmacist interact with their patients or with people?
Well, based on our experiences in the hospital this summer, for instance, like the pharmacist would talk to a patient about a new prescription, tell them, what it's for, what to expect, what sort of side effects to watch out for, how they should take it, information that a patient needs to take medication properly. In the hospital, we also talk to patients when they're coming in, so that we know what medications they were taking before they arrived at the hospital, so they can continue, getting treated for everything that they were being treated for previously, making sure that they're taking medications that are appropriate for them and not taking things that are going to interact with other drugs or with other diseases that they might have. Basically, we make sure that every drug they're taking is safe for them and appropriate. So we have to talk to the patient and find out all that information and educate them on what it is and why they're taking it and how to do it properly.
So what class prepares you for that interaction with the patient in your first year?
We have a lab class it runs about 4 hours once a week, and you basically practice counseling your TA or your peers. And last year they tried to have us practice counseling in Spanish as well, so that you'd have a little bit of experience with that. But you really do become comfortable with it. It's kind of awkward in the beginning, but by the end of the semester, it's not a problem.
In the lab class, we also learn how to compound drugs. So, any drugs that are not available, already formed from a manufacturer, we learn how to make gels or troches, capsules, tablets. So that's kind of hands-on and fun.
How much do you know about what you might do after you get the qualification, and how did you make that decision? How are you making that decision?
I don't know what I want to do after yet. I'm going to take each rotation as it comes, and then just leave my options open until you get into your 4th year, where it's 10 months of rotations. Am I saying that right? And so that I don't go into any situation saying this is not what I want to do, but I'm leaving my options open.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'm waiting. I don't know what I want to do right now either, but I don't want to close off anything yet. I think especially after 1 year. I mean, you have still a lot more opportunities out in the field yet, so I'm not going to close anything off.
And that's one thing that we feel like, I guess, to promote UNC, because I know that you're probably looking at other pharmacy schools too, but that is one area that we feel like we don't promote a certain area of pharmacy. We're not promoting just community or hospital or research or so forth. We want to all types of pharmacists to graduate from UNC, and we are able to provide those experiences. We have leaders in community pharmacy, national leaders in hospital, and research. So we feel like that is a strength of our program. And every year, roughly 40-some%, 44, 45, go into community pharmacy. The next biggest group goes into postgraduate training, so roughly 35% next go into either a residency, a fellowship, a PhD program, and then the next is probably hospital pharmacy, and then we have a few in industry and long-term care. So we're really proud of that breakdown. We feel like we have a lot of pharmacists going in different areas.
Would you guys say that you have a relationship with all your professors or pharmacists that you work with?
I'd say you can have a relationship if you want a relationship, like with them. If you just want to walk into class and then walk out, that's your option. But they're there if you want them. All of them are open to coming in, or you coming to talk to them. They're willing to be your mentors. You just have to put forth the initial effort.
Yeah, I think that I've gotten to know a lot of my professors. I know the ones that have candy, all the ones that are friendly and, are always willing to give you advice on all sorts of things. Being in the honors program has also been really helpful for that because you have more of an opportunity to interact with the professors one-on-one and kind of talk to them about what it is that they do and if you're interested in doing that with them. But everyone I've met here has been really excited about teaching and helping students figure out what it is that they want to do and how to do that. So I think the professors are great.
As far as like day-to-day life, I guess you guys would have all of the same students in all of your classes. Do you find that helpful, or do you not like it, or are you indifferent about it? How do you like it?
One of the first most important lessons I learned here was to pick a good seat because people don't like to give up their seat, and if you sit in their seat, it's a big problem. So it's kind of nice to always have the same people in your classes because everybody's doing the same curriculum. You always have somebody to study with or to help you go through the material. And like Z said, having one classroom and having the professors rotate in and out makes it a little bit easier. You just kind of sit here and learn.
I think it kind of bonds us. We're all together, we're all experiencing the same thing. And, I came here from out of state, like I said, and I just met, a lot of great people here. So I definitely like this setup a lot. And if you're not really so much of a big group kind of person, you get to your lab groups, and that's broken down even smaller. You get about maximum 8 people in your lab group that you really can kind of get to know initially. And then later on, when you're in electives in your 3rd year, you're gonna have a little bit smaller class sizes too. So, but I like it. Yeah. The question was whether or not we applied to more than one school of pharmacy and why we chose UNC. Yes, I applied to more than one school. I applied to 3 schools total. And for me, it was just like the enormous amount of opportunity that was here in the Triangle. Like you have the Research Triangle Park, like they were mentioning that before. There's so many opportunities to get involved here. Where I came from in Florida, those opportunities didn't really exist. There were opportunities there, but I feel like there was a lot more things we could do here, and it's a great school too, that I'm sure you're well aware of. So this was a perfect fit for me.
I actually only applied here. My husband and I had moved to North Carolina like 2 years before I started school, so about a year before I applied, because he's also a researcher, he's in science. So there was a lot of jobs for him in this area. So when he was graduating from graduate school, we picked an area and then hoped there was a pharmacy school there, and there was, and it was lucky that it was a good pharmacy school. Being a Duke graduate, it's hard to go to UNC, but it has a good program. I just don't cheer for the basketball team.
I applied to 3 schools, and I chose UNC, number one, because I was here for my undergrad, and it was just a comfortable setting, and it's not too far from like my home and stuff. But it's also got a great like outside of school life. You have the basketball team. It's just like a family of a Carolina family. So I just love Carolina, basically.
Were there any challenges in the application process that you can share with the rest of us?
Make sure if you ever took like any summer school class, like a community college, that you send those transcripts too. I forgot to send one, and I remember it was probably way past the deadline when that finally got sent. And I just thank my lucky stars that I got in. But just make sure all of your like I's are dotted and T's are crossed like that, because it's just one little class can set back your application process.
Like Dr. Cox said, make sure you read over your personal statement after you've written it. I think that's probably really important because, I feel like I'm a good writer and I like to just, go through, write it, and be done with it. But this was definitely one of the things you want to look back over before you submit it. And it's the way that they get to know you. So put a lot of thought into that.
My question is, how many students are on campus? And I know that you are off campus since you said you had a husband. And how do you deal with the on-campus students?
Are you referring to like living situations? Is that what?
Well, not necessarily living. Okay. It's more like you talked earlier about like study groups and stuff, and having a husband waiting for you at home. What do you do?
They have a great bus system here, and we get free bus passes. So I take the TTA bus. There's a park and ride at the mall, which is about 3 miles from my house. So it's real easy to commute back and forth. Like Colleen said, our schedule last year was easy enough. You could get done with class, spend a couple hours at the library, and then make it home, at a reasonable time. So it was fine. It wasn't really a problem for me.
Well, to be honest, I'm not much of a library person. I like to study by myself. So after class is over, I usually go home and study that way. If I really need help with like a professor, I can go see them before I leave campus, or sometimes there are study groups that you want to get involved with, and you go to the library. As for people living on campus as pharmacy students, I don't think there's many. Like I know at least one, but I don't know how many people live on campus as a graduate student.
When did you take your PCAT exam?
I took it in October of the year that I was applying. So I took it in October 2007, and I was trying to get in for fall 2008. On how we prepared, I got one of those little study book things that Kaplan offers those, and there's Princeton reviews and all those sorts of things. It was there. It was good for using tests, I guess, to check to what I knew. But I was a chemistry major, and I know one section was chemistry, and that was easier for me since I had gone beyond in that chemistry section, and I had done research in undergrad like in zoology, so I had the biology done pretty well. So I just kind of like, when it came up about like 2 months before, I guess it started, I just really started buckling down and taking a test on the weekend, and then just kind of evaluating what I got wrong and study that way.
I took it in January of the year I applied, so I guess January 2007. It had been a really long time since I had taken any chemistry classes or biology classes or geometry. So I took the Kaplan book. I didn't take that class, but I read through the book, and I actually had my high school chemistry book saved at home. So I just kind of reviewed all of the sections that I identified in the Kaplan book that I didn't remember very well. So I reviewed those, and I reviewed whatever the basic calculus things and the geometry. But I thought the Kaplan book was really good for me.
I took it twice in October, I guess it was October 2007 and then January, February of 2008. I did better on it the first time, so like if you're thinking taking it the second time is always going to be better, it's not. The first time I did like one of the books, and I did like half an hour every night for a month, and that was just the preparation. And the second time I think I tried to prepare more, and it just failed. So just go with your gut. I kept my October score, like I got in. It helped me a lot, yeah.
How big are the study groups?
They range. It can be from 2, I guess, to as many will fit in the study room at the Health Sciences Library, or they can be in this room. So I guess up to 142. I don't really know how to answer that.
I guess it depends on how many friends you have.
Can you give us a flavor of the interview process that you went through?
I remember being asked about like difficult situations like in work environments and like why I chose pharmacy, but it was really comfortable. It was me and 2 other people, and it was just a relaxed like conversation. It wasn't stressful like a job interview or anything like that. They really try to make you just as calm as you can be so they can really get a feel for your personality.
I was actually really stressed. I flew in from Florida the day of. I like had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get here. So I don't recommend that. Fly in the day before. I don't know if any of you are out of state, but I felt really comfortable though when I got here. Like as soon as I walked in, everybody was really friendly. The 2 people that interviewed me were just really, they wanted to do anything to make me feel comfortable. So I actually liked it a lot after it was over. So I don't know, like before you go in, you're like, oh no. And then afterwards, it's like, okay.
Why don't you guys maybe address the opportunities for leadership or in student organizations here in the school? Because I think that's one really strong point about our program.
I joined CAPS last year, and I wasn't really super involved like during my first year because I did have a job, and like I found that just decreased my time that I got to spend here on campus beyond like studying significantly. But this upcoming school year, I ran for like elected position through CAPS, and so now I'm like the NCAP liaison elect. And there's just a lot of different things. Like if you're interested in diabetes, there's a diabetes portion. If you're interested in like working with the elderly, there's something for that. I mean, there's something for everybody to get involved in. So there shouldn't be like, if you want to be involved leadership-wise, there's a place for you.
I'm also in CAPS, and a friend and I are the co-chairs for the smoking cessation interest group within CAPS. So there's diabetes care, and there's geriatric specialties, and then there's also things like smoking cessation. There's also opportunities to go out into the community and practice your counseling skills or interacting with patients. There's the Shack Outreach Clinic, which I've volunteered for a couple times. There's 2 clinics, one up in Roxborough and one in Hillsborough, where we actually go one day, and there's several patients that come regularly to these clinics about every second or third month, and they get health screenings, and they can talk to some nurses and the pharmacy students about their issues and get some advice and healthcare. And it's free for them, and it's a great opportunity for us to get some experience and some practice. So there's lots of opportunities to get involved, and all of these things need leaders, so lots of leadership opportunities too.
I've participated in Shack too, and it's really a lot of fun. You can go with your classmates and get to actually, that's another, I guess, patient opportunity where you get to interact with the patients, and you get to counsel them on their medications. So you kind of using what you learn in lab to like an actual practical setting. And let's see, there, also if you're interested in like clinical stuff, there's a clinical discussion group that meets. So there's just something for everyone.
Well, I'll ask the last question. One question that we've received a lot in the past is maybe describing the diversity in your class with the age range, backgrounds, people that have children or married or straight out of undergrad. Can you speak a little bit about that in your classes?
I guess when I came into my first lab group, I was actually in a group that had two people who are older than I was, I guess, or older than just coming out of graduate school, and they fit right in, I guess, with everybody. Like you're just talking with them. In fact, I saw one of them when I was on the bus on the way here, and I was like, "Hey!" So there's a wide range of people here, and it doesn't really seem to matter. You're all here together. You're all going for the same goal, and that's it doesn't seem to faze me, I guess. But there's diversity in age and like ethnic statuses, but it doesn't I guess stand out for me. Everybody's together for the same thing, and we all get along and communicate, so that's not a big deal.
Well, I guess I'm older than a lot of my classmates. I just tend to make myself feel better by thinking that it just makes me more focused. So I don't, everyone, sits in the same classroom, and I think parents maybe have a little bit harder time, just with time management. But as a parent, I think you learn that too. I don't have any kids, but I have a husband. So I think it's fine. I mean, you just have to, organize yourself for life, just like you would for anything else. So it's fine.
Most of you here seem to have had a very little to actually no time gap between your undergraduate studies or graduate studies to entering the pharmacy program. Some of us here may have graduated years, before with degrees in certain areas. With this profile of students in your class presently that may fall into that category, how are they doing in their first year of pharmacy school?
I feel like the classes, like you can sit down in the class and like as long as you've hit the prerequisites, like you're fine to go. They will tell you everything you need to know. Like sitting in the biochem classes, I'd never taken a biochem class before in undergrad. I took basic organic chemistry, whatever I needed to do. But then there was the biochem major sitting right next to you, and like they work you from the ground up. And yes, some people have it a little bit easier in the first test, but they're not going to throw something at you that they didn't try to teach you. So it's definitely fair.
Yeah, I actually, after 4 years in graduate school, I actually took 2 years, and I was just working upstairs. And I mean, the biggest transition was just not being able to come home in the evening after work and watch TV all evening, which is probably better for me anyway. I actually doing homework.
And I'll just add to that, we typically don't see any difference in performance between students that are more mature and are coming back to school versus people that, you know, sometimes folks that are applying as a sophomore feel a little insecure about that, but we don't see any difference in performance. I think the biggest difference is knowing how to manage your time, and sometimes people that have kids and a spouse, they may not be as active in some organizations as students that don't have those commitments outside of work. So that's a difference, but just knowing how to manage that time. But as far as academic performance, we do not see a difference.
Was your first year, was it ever overwhelming for you?
Yes. During exam time the first semester, I have to say I probably cried in the library. But it's something you expect. Like, everybody pulls those all-nighters and they feel horrible the next day. You just learn after you do that once or twice to, like, prepare yourself better the next time. Just work on time management for me.
I can't pull an all-nighter. Like, I can't. You just have to have time management. And I wasn't super stressed until that second semester, and that was a different story. So, but you get through it, and everybody's here to help you. So.
And I think one thing that's come up in previous information sessions is that the biggest challenge for that first year, people are going to have a little bit of difficulty adjusting. It's that first year. And what I've heard from students is it's that transition from memorizing and regurgitating information to application of material. So when you start pharmacy school, you learn certain things are covered in lectures and in your discussion groups, but you're tested on how to apply it. And so making that transition can sometimes be difficult for people depending on your background. So it's very different, and we really focus on working in groups and being collaborative, and we're trying to get away from competition, although we do have some competitive people. It's just by nature of the game, I guess, what type of students we attract. So that is what I've heard in the past about that transition. So I'd like to remind you there's a card in your packet, a survey about how you heard about the session and feedback. If you would please complete that, we would appreciate that feedback. And you can just put on the back row. And for those that are UNC, that are a current student, we do have a pre-pharmacy club, and there is a informational meeting on August 31st. If you're here at UNC, and UNC current student, August 31st. And I think there's a pre-pharmacy club sign-up sheet out front. I think we had a few people from UNC. And the students will stay here, and if you would like to come up to them to ask them individual questions, and they'll also be given tours. And also, Ms. Goldston, Mr. Clapper will be here to answer prerequisite questions or specifics about your transcript. Okay. And thank you so much for your interest, and we hope to see your application very soon.